All right, Keith and Ty, we're back at it. Gonna be interesting. Gonna miss talking to y'all in class. Let you catch my mistakes as I run through it, or let me know quickly if you got a question. But we're gonna get through this stuff, and you guys are gonna do well. It bothered me for Trinity Valley not to have a 4-hour pre-cal class like TJC, but right now I'm glad that we just have a 3-hour class. You guys are already 3/4 of the way through the course. We've taken many daily grades, tests. I have plenty of grades on you. We're not going to take any more grades except for the final exam. There'll be no more daily grades. Of course, you're going to do it all anyway. The two of you, I know you will. But we're going to work all this stuff. Hopefully things are still going as well enough that the last week of May, I can let the two of you come up to school and take your final. But we'll just have to see things are at that time. At any rate, we're going to get it taken care of. You're going to pass. You will get through pre-calculus and with flying colors, and you'll be ready for calculus next fall. We finished law of sines, and of course we know when we memorize that, we also memorize law of cosines. And we haven't used law of cosines yet, but we will. Of course, in comp math and in advisory, we've solved many triangles. We will not solve any that's any tougher than what we solved in there. The only difference is that instead of figuring out what we're doing and using a program for it, we're going to have to use law of sines and law of cosines. Now, law of cosines are used in two situations. It's used when you have two sides at an included angle. For example, this might be 1.2, this might be 45 degrees, and we would have to use law of cosines to solve such a triangle. The other situation that you use law of cosines is when you're given three sides. And we'd have to use this law of cosines to find one of the angles. Now, once we use law of cosines to find either the non-included side or to find one of the angles, after that we will use law of sines to finish and find the second part and possibly the third part. So we use law of cosines one time. It's a little bit more work than using law of sines. After we find what we need with it, then we'll use law of sines and finish up the problem. Now, this is law of cosines, which you're supposed to have memorized. There's actually 3 law of cosines, but when you memorize one, you've memorized all 3 of them. For example, when I've got side c squared, if instead of being c squared, it could have been a squared, and that would have been equal to c squared plus b squared minus 2cb cosine of A. And in like manner, we could find B squared. So once we memorize this law of cosines, then we memorize the other 2. Also, when we're looking for the side, we will most of the time use this formula in this form. C equal to the square root of A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine C. However, if we're looking for C, then we'll leave it in the form that's in to begin with. But if we're looking for capital C. But if we're looking for little c, we will probably use it in this form. Okay, let's work some problems. Open your book to page 740, and let's look at number 9. Now, I'm going to go ahead over to the side. I know you guys know it, but I'm going to go ahead. I see the 45. I know I'm going to be using that. So I'm going to put the 2 triangles in there that we have memorized when we're asked to give an exact value. 1, 1, square root of 2. That's our 45 degree right triangle. 1, 2, square root of 3. That's our 30, 60 degree right triangle. We have those memorized, and I suspect we're going to be using that one here fairly quickly. All right, now all they're asking for me to do on this one is to find that side which is opposite of the 45 degree angle. So to do that, I'm going to use law of cosines. I have two sides and the included angle. I know I'm going to automatically go to this. Since I'm looking for a side, I'm going to use this form of it. So we plug into that. That gives us the square root of a squared. 1 squared is 1. Plus b squared. 4 squared, 2 squared, that would be what, 32? Now, if we were in class now, I'd tell you guys be sure and check my arithmetic. Hopefully that's right. All right, minus 2 times a, which we would call 1, b, 4 squared is 2, cosine of c, in other words, cosine of 45 degrees. Cosine of 45 degrees, that's adjacent over hypotenuse, that would be 1 over the square root of 2. Now we would simplify that. 1 plus 32 is 33. Minus, I see that the square root of 2's would cancel out. And that gives me 2 times 1 times 4, that's 8. 33 minus 8 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. So we found this side right here, 5, and that's all that they're asking for in problem number 9. Now, we're going to work some more problems on here where they want us to go ahead and find this angle and this angle as well as that side. And when we start finding one of these other angles, we will use law of sines to do so. But right now, on this problem, all they're asking us to do is find that side, which we've done. Okay, let's erase that and let's get us another problem. Let's look at number 11. Now this time they're asking us for one of the angles. So when we were given two sides and included angle, we used law of cosines. When we're given three sides, we're going to use law of cosines. Now, the first time we was finding a side, we used this form of it. This time when we're trying to find an angle, we use this form of it. So I know that I've got, it makes no difference which one, well, we'll call this one C. We could have called it A and worked it different, but let's call this side C and this capital C. Little c, capital C. So I've got c squared, that would be 7 squared, which would be 49, equal to a squared. It makes no difference which one of these we call A. I'll call this capital A and this capital B. So that tells me that little a is equal to 3 and little b is equal to 5. So I have the square root of a squared, which would be 9, plus b squared, which would be 25, minus, and I need this off of there, excuse me. Okay, 9 minus 2, a, which is 3, b, which is 5, cosine of c, like so. Now then we're going to try to find c. So basically I'm going to solve for cosine c. So I got 49 equal to, I got 9 plus 25, which would be 34, minus, I have 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 5 is 30, cosine of c. I will subtract, I'm solving for cosine c, and then we'll solve for c. I will subtract 34 from both sides. When I subtract 34 from this, I would get 15 equal to negative 30 cosine of c. Solving for cosine of c, I see that I would divide both sides by negative 30, giving me negative 15 over 30, or other words, negative 1/2. Now, we know that c is going to be arc cosine of negative 1/2. Cosine of what is 1/2? Cosine of 60, adjacent over hypotenuse, is 1/2. So I see that I've got an angle of 60. However, it was negative 1/2 cosine, and we're doing arc cosine, and we just got through doing that not too long ago. When we're doing arc cosine, we know that that's going to be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. It's negative, that puts us in quadrant 2. So our answer is 60 in 2. And of course, we know that 60 in 2 would end up being 180 minus 60. So we see that our angle, or our answer, is 120. So theta is equal to 120 degrees. Now at this time, if we were in class, I would say, all right, any questions? And you guys would talk to me if we had anything at all we wanted to talk about. However, we're not in class. So you're going to go through and work these problems. If you have a question on any of them, what I want you to do is, there's place on Google Classroom to put a comment. Your comment should be a question on which problems that I need to work. And then before we start, we'll hit these lessons every 2 days. We'll have a new lesson. After I'll send this to you the morning of, it's not this coming Monday, but Monday week morning, you're going to be getting the lesson I'm talking about right now. And when you get that lesson, you're going to work it. Questions you have, you're going to send them to me. We're going to spend 2 days per section on most of the sections. When we finish the 2 days, then we'll move on to the next section. So if you've got a question on this or any other problem you run across, you're going to send it to me, and then I'll try to respond probably in a few hours for you. And we'll keep doing this process over and over. Okay, let's go to where we're solving a complete triangle. Now, and I'll repeat myself a few times, when we solve a complete triangle, most of the time we're going to have to use law of cosines on this section, especially we're going to have to use law of cosines first. And the triangles we're going to be solving is either going to be one where they give us all 3 sides, like the one we just worked, or it's going to be one where they give us 2 sides and an included angle like the first one we worked. And then after we do the law of cosines to find that unknown, then we're going to go to law of sines to finish working the problem. So let's pick one out that we have to do all of it on. Let's go to number, what looks like a good one. Let's go to number 13. Now, if we're in class right now, my first question would be, do I have it written correctly? Sometimes I write the problem wrong, but let me look again to make sure, and I do have it written correctly. All right, when we see one like that, the first thing we're going to do is recognize that I've got 2 sides and an included angle. So little a is going to be the first thing that we're going to solve for. And we're going to solve for little a by using law of cosines, since I have 2 sides and an included angle. I see that a would be equal to the square root of, and I would have b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a, like so. We memorize this rule, we know all 3 law of cosine rules. If I'm looking for a side, I'd prefer to just go ahead and write it with the square root on there instead of putting the a squared here. So we have, for a, we have the square root of b squared. I see that little b is equal to 5. I see that little c is equal to 3. So I have b squared, that would be 25, plus c squared, that would be 9, minus 2 times b, which is 5, times c, which is 3, cosine of a. All right. And we're going to solve for, and I'll put the A in here. I'll go ahead and put that's 121. And we're just going to plug that into our calculator. So let's all do that. And certainly you guys are going to plug in a lot faster than I do. I've got second square root 25 plus 9 minus 2 times 5 times 3 times cosine. I sure hope I have this on degrees. Cosine of 121. Close parentheses, hit enter. And I come up with A being 7.03 something. You guys go ahead and do that. I wish you were here where you could check my arithmetic, make sure I hadn't made a mistake. I'm going to go ahead and erase this stuff over here. So now then I have 7.03 for this side. I've got two angles missing. Now, when I do that, I'm through with law of cosines. Law of cosines is a little more work than law of sine. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. So when we get through with this thing, then we're going to go to law of sines to solve for either C or B. I think I'll solve for B. If I'm solving for B, I have little b, which is 5, using law of sines, over sine of B equal to, I got little a, which is 7.03, over sine of 121. That would tell me that 7.03 sine B is equal to 5 sine of 121, or that sine B is equal to 5 sine of 121 divided by 7.03, which would imply that B is equal to arc sine of 5 sine of 121 over 7.03. And we're going to plug this into our calculator. And we would go second sine. And we're going to go green F1 up here. And we're going to plug in the numerator 5 sine 121. And then we arrow down and we have 7.03. And we close our parentheses, we hit enter. I'm coming up with 37.56 degrees. I guess I should say 37.6. Okay, I think I'll round it off to 37.6. Now, if we had all right. I should be asking for questions now. I don't need to. I don't have y'all here to ask you. Got it? All right. I've got B is equal to 37.6 degrees. I've got A is 121 degrees. If we had never had this class, we should be able to finish that problem up here solving for C. I know that C is going to be equal, all these add up to 180 minus 121 minus 37.6. And we're going to plug that into our calculator. I have 180 minus 121 minus 37.6. And I'm coming up with 21.4. And hopefully that haven't made an arithmetic mistake. I've got a teacher's edition, so let me see what the answer is. That was number 13, wasn't it? They got 21.430. All right, so they're in agreement with us. Okay, every problem that's on this section is like one of the three problems that we worked. Again, if we're given two sides and an included angle, we're going to use law of cosines to find that side opposite of the given angle. If we're given three sides, we're going to use law of cosines to find one of the three angles. In both type problems, after we've found that first unknown, then we're going to use law of sines to finish the problem. Why do we use law of sines instead of law of cosines? Sometimes we could use law of cosines again, but we're not going to because it's a little shorter, a little easier, if we go to law of sines after we've used law of cosines. That's our first lesson. You guys work these problems. Again, if you have any questions at all, what you're going to do, I want it by problem. In other words, don't just say, you know, is the sky blue or something. I want it by problem, number 21 on this section or whatever. Give me the number, and then we'll work it. In my other classes, a lot of my classes, I'm expecting for us to have 3-4 exchanges before we finish the section. I suspect with you guys, we'll probably have maybe 1, sometimes maybe 2 exchanges, and you'll have it figured out. You guys are going to do well. Tough time for our country. You do what people are telling you on TV. You keep your hands washed. You stay away from large crowds. Don't shake hands with people. Use sanitizer on your hands. You stay safe. You take care of yourself. I'll be looking for your questions, and you guys have a good day. Low battery. Close. Okay, I hope the heck I got that.